So, are you excited about learning how to think like a corporate goon? Sounds horrible, doesn't it? I thought I'd give you a brief example of how I would approach the abstract assignment. This is something that takes a certain skill, being able to describe something relatively complex and make it sound so a normal person could understand it. Let's dive in! So I know what you were probably thinking when you got this assignment, when you started to look at it. What in the heck does corporate ideology have to do with World of Warcraft? It's a little bit of a puzzling question because you come from the title and it seems like these two things don't normally fit together. I love that kind of thing personally, where you get two things that don't seem like they fit together and the author is able to convince you that they do perfectly. And it makes you look at everything in a new light. But that's me. We could go through a lot of the reading process we talked about in our last video. Such as proofreading, but I'm going to stick to active reading here. I'm not going to do everything in active reading because I have provided an annotated version of the corporate ideology in the World of Warcraft article. It's also there with an outline and an abstract that you can look over so you can see how I went through the process. And this is my process. I recommend it, of course, but if your process differs, doesn't matter as long as the results get good. So, I noted about 45 or 50 things as I went through the article, but I'm only going to talk to you about, say, the top 10 of them, because I think they give you a good enough idea as to where the article is going and what the article is doing. You realize quickly after the first paragraph, that this isn't a business journal entry. It's an academic article. It starts off talking about how addicted he got to the game, how much time he spent on it. He spent more time killing trolls over last year than I have drinking alcohol, eating candy, or making love combined. During the same year, I watched the first 2 seasons of the narrative-rich multi-sequential TV series Lost on DVD, 48 episodes all in a row. That took about 35 hours total, about 8% of the time I spent playing World of Warcraft. So, the first thing we've established is that this game, and by extension a lot of the games like it, has a certain addictive power. It's a game that sucks you in. Right there, I think that shows a certain level of significance. If it's a game that once you start playing it, you want to keep playing it, that's noteworthy. We get to the clearest statement of the argument here. The principal reason why Blizzard has been able to build such a large and devoted audience for their flagship product is, in fact, because it offers a convincing and detailed simulacrum of a process of becoming a success in capitalist societies. It's a capitalist narrative, and that's why people in a capitalist society like it. So, what we have going on here is a game that mirrors what we think of in becoming a success within our real world. How does that work? The game is training a generation of good corporate citizens not only to consume well and pay their dues, but also to climb the corporate ladder, to lead projects, to achieve sales goals, to earn and save, to work hard for better possessions, to play the market, to win respect from their peers and their customers, to direct and encourage and cajole their underlings to outperform, to become better employees and perhaps eventually effective future CEOs. Then the big claim, playing World of Warcraft serves as a form of corporate training. We know that the focus here at this point is going to be on the corporate training angle. We learn very quickly that the author of this piece doesn't really consider video games as an art. He says it, next paragraph, video games are primarily entertainment products, not forms of art. It's something he mentions, but it's not something that he feels like exploring. He admits that there might be people who see it this way, but they're wrong, and we're going to focus entirely on the theoretical angle. Is that a fault of his? Well, I've certainly played video games that are more art than business looking, but that's me. But let's get back into his claim. Playing World of Warcraft serves as a form of corporate training. Not necessarily this is how you work this program, this is how you pursue these leads to go out and get sales, but in a more general standpoint, the goals of corporate training and the goals of World of Warcraft are the same. Get most product, sell for most money. He makes his position clear on the whole art versus commerce thing. Onward. The logical goal of MMORPG producers, then, is to immerse players in one single game for as long as possible without diversion to other virtual worlds, environments, and without end. And if this isn't a good description of an addicted player, I don't really know what is. People do get sucked up into these kind of games. I had a student in one of my tech writing classes who told me that he played about 5 hours at the end of every day. That's a lot of time. Now, the main reason I think the author is putting this in here is he wants us to be very much aware of how serious it is that this game is working as corporate training, and we don't think about it as such, but it must be sinking in because it gets us to play for hours upon hours upon hours. I marked a few things which are a little bit more definitional than anything else. They're procedure that shows you how the author went around. He talks about the reward systems. The game is a voluntary interactivity in which one or more players follows rules that constrain their behavior, enacting an artificial conflict that ends in a quantifiable outcome. So the fact that you go through these things, follow these rules, and get some kind of reward is the definition for what he sees going on. Obviously, this cuts out all the fantasy elements, all the role-playing elements, all the things that we would say that draw us to the game. The player's actions have multiple and complex effects, not on a single score, but on multiple quantifiable and non-quantifiable attributes. So there's a few ways to measure success. And this ties in with how he sees the corporate world, too. I mean, really, you think about it, he's got an interesting point here. We play these games that, is it a game if you can't possibly win by a standard thing? Then you have to kind of employ your own definition of what it means to win. And I play Minecraft, and that's definitely true there. You can't really win Minecraft. So I look for landmarks. I build a big house, for instance, and that's a good landmark for me. But that's also a very corporate kind of goal, isn't it? It's the same kind of thing we want to do in the real world. Bit more on the same approach. The metrics of achievement in World of Warcraft have shifted from the abstraction of a numerical score to more complex social and economic metrics that are familiar with everyday life. As we were saying, you get a good house, you get money. But the interesting claim that builds on this is that World of Warcraft is a world in which work is valued as an end in its own right. How does Reddig think World of Warcraft plays the work-life balance? Doesn't really think that it's desired at all. And if the game is that successful in sucking you in and you play for that many hours, you can see his point. Claim, and this is one that I think is pretty big and worth exploring to just a little degree. In modeling a moderately complex economy, World of Warcraft offers its players training in the basics of supply and demand economics, market, and arbitrage. This is supported by the descriptions of the gameplay he gave right above. And lest you think he's stretching, there is a real-life market for selling in-game achievements. Today, I found this where if you are playing Animal Crossings and you don't want to go through the work of building all this stuff yourself, you can just go to the site and pay somebody, and they've done the work. That's very corporate. This kind of stuff has been going on for a little while. And of course, like a lot of corporate behavior, it ends up having its dark side to it. In the game RuneScape in particularly, there was a trend of gold farming. And it's not just people going and looking for the resources in the game. People would run sweatshops in China and India where they would hire people off the street for very little, have them play to mine gold or other valuable items, which the owner of the sweatshop would then sell online for a whole lot of money. If you want to see just how ridiculous this gets, for a while, there was even a sweatshop video game. Telling me there's not connections between video games and the real world? They go back and forth, don't they? Anyway, he ends up talking, Blizzard and other game developers have, however, found a way to integrate the Protestant work ethic into the design of their games. They have created an alternative universe in which play is a form of work. Is he arguing that it's not play? No. He's just arguing that the corporate ideology and the skills it takes to survive in a capitalist economy are a very, very large part of the game in general. It's a very large part of how the game's designed. Now, in addition to my annotated version of the article, I'm also posting an outline where I was basically taking the key points from my annotations and putting them in the order which they're in the article, which I then used that to go to an abstract. I'm not saying mine is the be-all, end-all abstract, and if your reading is different than mine, that's perfectly fine too. I just wanted to give you a model of how to think about this article, and I wanted to give you a model for how to do a research abstract, which, since we're working on a research abstract assignment, that seems to make a lot of sense, huh? If your results ended up being different than mine, I wouldn't worry about it too much. Part of what we're doing here, is attempting to summarize the paper as it already exists, but the call to judgment is going to be each our own. That's part of the real job here, is this something that the person up above might want to actually spend some time with? If you honestly think it isn't, tell them. Don't just summarize, come to judgment. See you next time.